and for the hasten reappearance, and that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala makes us among the helpers and the companions of the Imam of our time, and even louder salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وبه نستعين الحمد لله الذي جعل الحمد مفتاحا لذكره وسببا للمزيد من فضله ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه سيدنا ونبينا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى آله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين لا سيما بقية الله في الأرضين أرواحنا له فداء أما بعد فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم هذا خلق الله فأروني ماذا خلق الذين من دونه بل الظالمون في ضلال مبين صدق الله العلي العظيم اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. First and foremost, I give my condolences to each of you on the occasion which we have come to commemorate, and that is, on one hand, the aftermath of Karbala, as we normally do in these days, but also specifically the shahadat of Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi afdhalu salatu wassalam, whose martyrdom was the 25th of Muharram. And tonight is the eve of the 25th of Muharram. Though he did not become martyr in Karbala, but yet still in the month of Muharram, he was shaheed. And in that there's a wisdom, but we'll save that for some other time. Tonight, inshallah, we will conclude our discussions that we began 2 nights ago. And this discussion was about justice, a topic that we had begun from the beginning of Muharram, because it is intrinsically related to the mission of Imam Hussein alayhi afdhalu salatu wassalam. We spoke about justice and a bit of a background, since tonight there's actually more people than there were the other night. And if I go directly into the topic from where I left off yesterday, I think many people will actually be lost. So I just want to give a background. This idea and this concept of justice, and particularly there were a few questions as well. And it should be clear that justice, what it means in Arabic, وَضَعُ شَيْءٍ فِي مَحَلِّهِ, to place something in its proper place, or to give something its proper due, to give a person his or her proper due. This is justice in a nutshell. So we spoke about this justice and the 4 types of justice which are outlined in the Quran. First, adlun takwiniyun, natural justice, or what we associate with divine justice, adlun ilahi. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed a specific order in this universe. And that order, again, runs by the laws of physics, and it is perfect. It has a balance in it. And it's set on a course. I think that, subhanAllah, if you were listening, or if you didn't understand the Arabic but was reading the translation of Surah Al-Qamar, it explains it or outlines this perfect balance with which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed this universe in. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has created this universe, He has placed it in a particular order, and this is what is called adlun takwiniyun. natural justice or natural balance that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to this world and this universe, so that we may benefit from all of the treasures that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed in this world, all of the, what he says, the water, the air, the even the orbit that this our earth goes in. So all of these are a balance. This is the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed this perfect order. The other types of justice, which were adlun tashri'iyun, legal justice, adlun ijtima'iyun, social justice, and adlun akhlaqiyun, ethical justice. So we spoke about those in the beginning of Muharram, and now we want to come back to these same topic, these same concepts of justice, but examine it from what is considered a conceptual point of view, or take a what they call conceptual learning. And when you do conceptual learning, you compare and you contrast the one topic with another, or the aspects of a particular thing. To give you an example so it becomes more understandable, that when you study about certain elements in physics, certain physical bodies, you want to study the weight or the length of something, and you say, okay, this thing is heavy, but it's heavy in relation to something else. You have to compare it to something in order for you to determine that this thing is heavy. Because I could say that, okay, my ring is heavy, but in comparison to what? To a cotton ball. Yeah, it's heavier than the cotton ball. I could say that the cotton ball is heavy, but in comparison to what? To something that may be lighter than that. So we are taking that perspective with examining these four types of justice. And we've only dealt with, in these last 3 days, adlun takwiniyun, to contemplate or to see if there's actually something that is opposite of that divine justice, or adlun takwiniyun, that natural justice and order that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has placed within this earth. And thus far what we have come to, the conclusions what we can make based on our examination of verses 10 and 11 of Surah Luqman, so chapter 31 of the Quran, verse 10 and 11, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states, هَذَا خَلْقُ اللَّهِ فَأَرُونِي مَاذَا خَلَقَ الَّذِينَ مِن دُونِهِ. This is His creation. He has put it forth. And if anyone has created something that they have placed a specific balance and order in, then bring the proof. So what we've concluded, at least on a level of contending with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and authority, there's no opposite. Of course, some have tried to claim this, like Fir'aun, when he stated, Ana rabbukum al-a'la, but again, Fir'aun is nothing other than a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So there's nothing that contends with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's power and authority. There's nothing that contends with His sovereignty. And theoretically, as we've stated that within the terms of the law or legal philosophy, the concept of jus abudendi, which means that a person, if he or she has complete sovereignty and domain over their property, something that they own, this concept or this philosophy of jus abudendi, meaning that they have the right to destroy it. And there's no repercussions of that. So if you, for example, you wear glasses, some of our youth, they wear glasses. If you decided, okay, I'm going to destroy my glasses, I'm going to break them up, the law, no lawyer, no cop can come and say, well, hey, you broke your glasses, now you can be, we can take you to jail for that, or we can write you a ticket for that. No, this is your property. You have complete sovereignty over that property. Your parents won't be happy. It won't be very rational that you do that. But it's your property. No one can take you to court, or no one can sue you for that. So if, again, we can think of, at least within legal philosophy, that someone who has absolute sovereignty over their own property, then why not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? Why shouldn't he have, again, this absolute sovereignty over his creation, which he owns, which he has created, which he has brought into existence? Therefore, he has complete authority. And in theory, yes, he can destroy his creation as he wants or as he wills. However, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we stated, and as he states in the Quran over and over, that he does not abuse this authority. He states that Huwal Azizul Hakim, that his authority and complete sovereignty over his creation is coupled with his wisdom. And this is why, again, that wisdom brings about that balance or that order, that just order which he created this world with. So he does not abuse, but rather, as we will speak about a little bit more today, that how does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala interact with his creation in and of itself, that he does not abuse his creation. So that's one thing that we concluded. Another thing that we concluded is that there's no such thing as pure evil. Pure evil does not exist. Because pure evil, if it existed, it would be in opposite of, again, this justice, this natural justice which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has created. And what we mean by pure evil, just to give a brief, very brief, because we discussed it yesterday in a little bit more detail, that when you say that something is bad, something is evil, something is wicked, because some have tried to say that because evil exists, then there's no all-knowing, all-divine God, no all-good God. But evil does not exist. There's no such thing as pure evil, because evil is a non-existential thing. And what do we mean by that? So if we take some of the things that have been called evil, blindness, it in itself is not something tangible, or ignorance, for example. It's not something that you can point to, that you can locate, but rather it is the non-existence of a perfection. Sight is something that you can detail. That what is sight? And the non-existence of sight we call blindness. Likewise, you cannot pinpoint ignorance, but you can pinpoint knowledge. In other words, also, likewise, if a person gains knowledge, he doesn't lose ignorance. He doesn't lose something. No, he only has a gain. So if a person didn't know, he was ignorant, or he did not know or understand that 2 + 2 is 4, so he doesn't have something that's called the ignorance or the misunderstanding. No, he just doesn't know. So it doesn't exist. But once he learns this thing, he actually gains something. He gains without losing anything. So we don't say that he gained knowledge and he lost a misunderstanding or ignorance. No, he's only gained. So therefore, pure evil doesn't exist. There are things which are associative evils. They exist. And what are associative evils? These are things which, again, in and of themselves, they're not evil. But we associate with them some form of evil or some form of wickedness. Why? Because they cause the non-existence of something else. And we gave the example of poison of a snake. So we say that, yes, poison of a snake is bad, it's wicked, it's evil. But is it evil in and of itself? No. Because it's beneficial for that snake. But when that poison it enters into the bloodstream of a human being and it causes death, it causes that individual's physical life to come to an end, to no longer exist in this world, and we say that that is bad, it is wicked. So those things, again, which are associated evils, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has placed this under the context, or some of these things, under the context of this natural order that we have in this world. And so therefore, as we stated, that natural disasters in and of itself, they're not evil. It is the order of things. And in fact, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that Huwa al-Azizul Hakim, that when He places certain order, He places creation within a certain order, is with wisdom. And it's up to us, we may not understand all of the wisdom behind that, but it is up to us to discover these things, to go and to find out. And then when we find out these things, again, on one hand, understand the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And on the other hand, to use that knowledge to improve ourselves and to improve our world and our universe and our relationship with one another. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa So we want to speak about this particular thing because we see that on one hand, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with regards to certain natural disasters, floods, plague, what was mentioned in the Surah Al-Qamar, the winds, tornadoes that came and wiped certain nations out. And He did so as a punishment for them. But we cannot jump to the conclusion, as some people, they jump to the conclusion, they say, well, anytime that there's an earthquake or anytime there's some sort of natural disaster, this is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wiping a people out or bringing about a punishment upon a people. No, that's not necessarily the case. That is not necessarily the case. So we can't go to that extreme and say that, oh, Allah has brought this calamity upon these people, and that is His punishment, His wrath, His anger at those people. Nor can we say that this is an evil in and of itself. No, it follows the natural laws of physics. So we need to understand, at least, again, for individuals who are have some sense of religiosity, that what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and when does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He punish a people based on those natural calamities? Because sometimes there is a factor, get these particular issues out the way. Sometimes there is a factor of individuals, people not knowing, not having knowledge about certain calamities, certain natural disasters. Like when the plates, the tectonic plates, when they shift and cause earthquakes sometimes, this was at one point an unknown factor. But now that we discovered that there are 52 plates on the crust, it has 52 plates, and where those plates, where they meet. So now the question is that, is it smart to actually build buildings and houses right on top of a fault line? At that point, it becomes a question of our own intellect. If you know this is a fault line for an earthquake, why do you build on it? Move away from that. You may still feel the tremors and these type of things, but being right on top of the fault line, you're putting yourself at more risk. And so if something happens, this is not Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishing. Not necessarily Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punishing those. This is a person not using his intellect wisely. Or if we build a city below sea level, which, again, I've passed through New Orleans. Very nice, very exotic. You're standing in the middle of the market and it's below sea level. And then you walk up a hill and you actually see the ocean and you see boats, and it's amazing. It's mind-boggling that you're standing in the middle of the city, but the ocean is above you. But you need to take certain measures of precaution. Your intellect will tell you that, okay, this is a risk that you're taking. Even at one point, even the very city that you're in, Austin, and I would give you this assignment to go and look at the history of Austin, the development of Austin. One of the things that the city of Austin, it was prone to floods. Actually, before it got the name of Austin, I think it was called Waterloo. Why was it called Waterloo? Because so many floods were coming. And there were so many attempts to build dams in order to keep the Colorado River back from flooding the city and destroying everything. And it took a while, but eventually, the building and the engineering of dams became so good that, again, we don't face that many floods. Every once in a while, like in the last couple of weeks, you get a flood, but not like the ones that were in the beginning of trying to establish a city in Austin. So some of the calamities that we face from natural disasters, part of it is because of, again, maybe we're not using all of our rational faculties in order to take every precaution that we can in order to minimize, human suffrage or death in no sense. So with that said, that again, not all of the natural disasters are punishments from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So when does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He actually punish a people? That if He set forth the most best system, a system with justice and balance, so what criterion does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Himself state that by these criterions that He brings about these calamities and these disasters to wipe out our people? One of the things that we understand for sure is that there must be a prophet or someone. And this is one way that we can tell that, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by means of a natural disaster, He is wiping out a people. He is punishing a group of people. And this comes in many of the stories that we find in the Quran and even biblical texts, many religious texts, that a prophet came to a people and he, again, brought the message of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to them, and they rejected. And when they rejected and they begin to spread corruption in the earth, and then the prophet has warned them that if you continue this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will destroy you. And after warning, after warning, after warning, when they did not listen and they continue to create corruption in the earth, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed these individuals. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in Surah An-Nisa, and again, this shows the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He is the one, as we mentioned before, that He is the one who brings about justice in this world. He Himself, again, applies this justice to Himself. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يَظْلِمُ مِثْقَالَ ذَرَّةٍ, that not even an ounce worth does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala impose or oppress His creation. Not to the amount of even a mustard seed is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unjust with His creation. وَإِن تَكُوا حَسَنَةً يُضَاعِفْهَا وَيُؤْتِي مِن لَدُنْهُ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. He says, and if you are good, and if you are righteous, and you act with justice yourself, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will give you a reward. Not only will He give you a reward and increase that reward, He'll give from Himself. In other words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, He goes beyond the point of justice. And this is to show His kindness, His mercy. And He says, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جَئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ قَوْمٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. Then He tells the Prophet, He says, and if you want to see and understand this justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, عَدْلٌ تَكْوِينِيٌّ. And think of it in those legal concepts that we spoke about before, that, again, we human beings have created, or at least have thought of this idea for themselves, that if you own and you have sovereignty over your own property, no one can question you with regards to how you treat your own property, because you have complete sovereignty over it. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even with this, He says, no, show you His hikmah and His wisdom. He says that, and to show you that He does not oppress His creation, He does not abuse His creation, He says that He will bring witnesses to testify from every nation and from every people, that He will bring forth a shaheed. And if you want to understand, I went over this concept in the first 10 days about who is a shaheed. What is the qualities of a person who bears witness and gives testimony? I don't want to repeat that here, but nonetheless, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's saying that with regards to that property that He has, with regards to that thing which He has complete sovereignty over, that you yourself as human beings say that you have use Abu Dande. You have the right to destroy it if it's yours and you have complete sovereignty. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, even with that, because He is just, because He is wise, with regards to His authority, He's not abusing His authority, He says, I'll bring a witness from among you to testify that what I've done was not unjust. And even those witnesses that I bring just from among the common people, He says, then I will bring someone that everyone would accept, and that is a prophet. Just like the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one of the things that we can say about him is that those who accepted him and rejected them, one of the things that they said about him, he was sadiqun ameen, that he was truthful. So you will bring someone, again, just from among the regular people, common people, he will testify, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala was just. And then someone who there's absolutely no doubt in his or her testimony, like Rasulullah, he will come and he will testify as well. And we can find this also with our Imma, alayhim afsalatu wasalam. Even those who were with them and those who were against them. One of the things that they said about them, what they were, they were truthful. They never spoke a lie. So you'll have someone even to that caliber that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying, with this thing which I have complete authority over, if you want to see that I will not create, or I am not unjust with them, even to the point of a mustard seed, I'll bring these witnesses for you. So this, again, establishes this idea and this concept of adlun takwini. That, again, with regards to that, there's no opposite to that. There's no natural or there's no pure injustice or evil or wickedness. Even beyond this, again, when we look at when does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala punish, He states that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He states that He is, and He's very clear about it. He says, لَقَدْ حَلَقْنَا الْقُرُونَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ. Yes, we've destroyed nations before you. No doubt about it. لَمَّا, but when? لَمَّا ظَلَمُوا وَجَاءَتْهُمْ رُسُلُهُمْ بِالْبَيِّنَاتِ وَمَا كَانُوا لِيُؤْمِنُوا. It says that, yes, we have destroyed nations before you, but only after that nation, they have been sent a prophet who have brought the message, who have brought clear signs, but that nation persisted on injustices. That nation persisted to be unjust and commit crimes. And He says, ذَلِكَ نُجْزِي الْقَوْمَ الْمُجْرِمِينَ. He says, those individuals, they are mujrimeen. They've created corruption, fasad in the world. He says, and at that point, because He has sent individuals, He has sent the right message, He has sent guides, but they persisted on this injustice, then at that point, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He will destroy them, whether it be through natural means or through other means. But since we're talking about adlun takwiniyun, the order of this world, natural disasters, yes, we destroyed them. But not simply out of oppression or injustice. No, we gave them plenty of times, a chance. And we see this time and time again when we read the Quran. And this is what, again, one of the reminders in the Quran is for us. Quite often Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, even travel in the earth. Go look and to see what has happened to those nations who have come before you. He says, if you think that you're more powerful, He says, no, you'll see. In actuality, in certain aspects, they are actually more powerful than you. They had more offspring than you. Their lifespan was longer than your lifespan. That even with all of your technology, there's still things that they have created that you still can't figure out. Why? Because this shows a certain depth even to their knowledge. That we've, yes, advanced in, computer technology, electronics, so forth and so on, but neither the pyramids in South America or the pyramids in Egypt. When we look at them, when we try, they're mind-boggling. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that even such nations that has risen to such greatness, again, because of their oppression, because of things that they have done, that some of them were wiped out, that they no longer exist. Or if they exist, certain remnants of them exist, and not to that magnitude. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, again, does not oppress His creation. He sends them warnings, and after He sends them warning and they do not listen, they persist, then He sends His punishment. Another verse that indicates upon this, and those first two verses that we recited are verse 40 and 41 of Surah An-Nisa. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He also states, again, if we want to understand when does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala send that punishment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not punish His creation if there are among those people, among the nation, individuals or a group that is advocating for justice. That are advocating for justice. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, وما كان ليهلك وما كان الله ليهلك القرى وأهلها صالحون مصلحون وأهلها مصلحون. Excuse me. وما كان الله ليهلك القرى بظلم وأهلها مصلحون. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says that if there are a group of people, ahluha. Again, there's a qura, meaning the people, a group, a nation. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not punish them, and this has kind of a double meaning. When we look at, the Mufassirin, they said Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He does not punish the people, this nation, for a sin or for oppression when those people in that nation wa ahluha muslihun. On one hand, it could mean that, yes, if that whole nation, if they are righteous and they are upright and they are following the principles and they live their life as a just life, then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He won't punish them. Why? Because oppression does not exist. So there's no need to punish them. Another meaning or interpretation of this is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He doesn't destroy that nation, al-qura, meaning the entire nation, that there's a group, meaning not the entire nation. You may find some injustices among the nation, however, ahluha, that there's a group from among that nation, among those people, that these individuals are muslihun, that they're advocating for justice. And quite often we see this in some of the statements of Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalu salatu wassalam, where they state that, yes, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not destroy certain nations, although it seemed that there was corruption was rampant in that nation. This is why? Because there was a prophet among them. Or there was an individual or a group of individuals among those people, and he was advocating for justice and righteousness. But when that person leaves, or if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells that person to leave, that's when the punishment and the calamity of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will come upon them. One of the examples, if you want to understand this point, is that if we look at the life of the Prophet Yunus. So Hazrat Yunus, when he was among his people, again, he was trying to advocate and make them righteous and get them to follow what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has sent down for them. But many of the people, most of the people, they weren't listening to Hazrat Yunus. Even to the point that a group of them said that, well, if what you're saying is true, then pray to Allah and bring the punishment. We won't believe until you bring the punishment. So pray, we want to see, bring the punishment. So at that point, this is when Hazrat Yunus, he left from among his people because he did not want to pray for the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and he was in that city. Why? Because if he prayed for that punishment, and as long as he is in that city, the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would not come. And they were challenging this idea and this concept of a punishment. So Hazrat Yunus, he left, and as he left, he began to pray. And he started to, along the way, begin to prepare his prayer that, oh Allah, bring the punishment among this people, because they have denied you, they have rejected you, they have rejected your message, and actually they are challenging your authority. That if you're saying that there's this qiyamah and that we will be punished, then bring it. So at that point, as Hazrat Yunus, he left, he began this dua. But it's stated that, and this is the reason for which Hazrat Yunus, he was returned back to his people, that when he was, again, went on the ship, and then he was thrown from the ship, and went into the belly of the well, or whatever, and brought back, he said that when Hazrat Yunus was making this dua, then the earth started to quiver, and people began to see signs. It says, and among those people, among the people of Hazrat Yunus, that some of them, they began to make tawbah, and they began to actually go to other people and tell them, what have you done? You need to believe. Is this not enough? Believe. So among them, there were people who were righteous, who were muslih. And because of that, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not destroy them and returned to them their prophet. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he gives all of these points. There's some other reasons as well. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says a similar thing, that he does not destroy a nation بِظُلْمٍ وَأَهْلُهَا غَافِلُونَ. Likewise, if the people are unaware, meaning that they were not able to obtain guidance, not that they rejected it, it was brought to them, no. Either it didn't come to them, or they didn't have the capacity to understand it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he's not going to punish them until he sends someone to them that can teach them, that can warn them, to give them understanding. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's justice, adlun ilahi, is to this extent, that he does not destroy, he does not abuse his authority, but rather his justice, his authority is coupled with his wisdom, coupled with his mercy and his clemency, that he spares his nation, his creation. And he wants the best for his creation, even to the point, as we mentioned, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if one is good and righteous, he gives him a great reward. وَيُؤْتِي مِن لَدُنْهُ أَجْرًا عَظِيمًا. Like from himself, he gives. He gives beyond that which one deserves, to show his kindness and his mercy. And among those things, if we want to, of course, we cannot count those great things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. It's impossible to count the blessings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But among those blessings that we definitely can pinpoint, that is in the Quran and the Prophet Muhammad and the Ahl Bayt of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But not only are these things great blessings, they are also something that we must, again, follow, not simply give lip service to. Not only are the great blessings, but it is a great responsibility as well. Because through the Quran, through the life of the Prophet Muhammad, through the life of Ahlul Bayt alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he is sending that guide and that warner to us, those individuals who, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself, he says that, yes, he will not destroy a people, he will not punish a people until they are sent a message. And if they reject it, at that point, they will be held accountable. So our knowledge of the Quran, our knowledge of the life of Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, it is a responsibility that we will be held accountable for. That the people in the time of the Prophet and Ahlul Bayt, alayhim afdalus salatu wassalam, we actually also saw them close. They will be held accountable for what they did with this blessing and this ni'mah and this barakah from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's, again, some nations, they were crushed and sealed in caves. The people of Salih. For what? For slaughtering a camel, a she-camel. But what about the slaughter of Imam al-Hussein and the Ahlul Bayt? Some of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's creation was punished, as is stated in Surah Al-Qamar, through tornadoes. And that's for rejecting the message. But what about the rejection of the Quran? The rejection of the statement of Rasulullah, إِنِّي تَارِكٌ فِيكُمُ الثَّقِلَيْنِ كِتَابُ اللَّهِ وَعِتْرَتِي أَهْلُ الْبَيْتِ. What about rejecting this statement of Rasulullah, that I'm leaving behind two weighty things: the book of Allah and my Ahlul Bayt. But it was not simply a rejection of these things. When we look at the history, the unfortunate and gloomy history, that it wasn't simply rejecting. Some people, they rejected the message, they turned away, but these individuals, the Ahlul Bayt, they were slaughtered, they were massacred, either killed by the sword or by poison. Those who were slain by the sword, again, among the ones that we often commemorate and we are commemorating in these days, is Imam Hussein and his Ahlul Bayt, the menfolk who went to Karbala, who we not only mourn, but again, in the life of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, alayhi salatu wasalam, it said that he continuously mourned for the Ahlul Bayt, mourned the shahadat of his father. And in fact, it says that when Imam Zayn al-Abidin, from the time that they returned back to Medina, and subhanAllah, we always hear that how Imam Hussein, that whenever he saw water, he would begin to cry. He would remember how his father was left without water, how his brother and how his cousins, how his uncle, they were not given water, how he himself did not drink water, how, again, the women and children did not have water in Karbala. But it's also said that Imam Zayn al-Abidin in Medina, that whenever he looked towards the women folk of the Ahlul Bayt of Bani Hashim, whenever he saw his aunt, whenever he looked upon Zaynab for the period that she was there, because she was exiled at one point, but he said that whenever he looked upon them, he also began to cry, that tears began to come in his eye. And some would ask him that, why do you cry when you look at your aunt and your sisters? He says, I cry because when I look at them, I remember the time in Karbala that after my father, he was martyred, that the women and girls, they would run from tent to tent, And I could not do anything. I could not protect them. So when I see them, I remember that moment. And I remember not only were they running from tent to tent, but there was someone who sang, أَحْرِقُوا بُيُوتَ الظَّالِمِينَ. They were calling us oppressors. They were saying, burn the houses of the oppressors. Burn the tents of those who are oppressors. They were calling us this. They were calling the Ahlul Bayt of the Prophet oppressors. Imam Zayn al-Abidin has said that he would weep profusely for the Ahlul Bayt. And it's just amazing that from his crying he did not pass away itself. But the wali at that time, they gave the orders to kill Imam Zayn al-Abidin. Walid ibn Abdul Malik said that he poisoned Imam Zayn al-Abidin. And as the poison, it flowed through his body. They described that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, on those last few nights, it said that يُغْشَى عَلَيْهِ سَاعَةً بَعْدَ سَاعَةٍ, that he was fainting, he was going in and out of consciousness, time to time. They said, وَلَيْلَةُ وَفَاتِهِ, on the night, on the eve, and it's like this night, on the eve of his shahadat, of his martyrdom, غَشَى عَلَيْهِ ثَلَاثَةَ مَرَّةٍ, that 3 times. He went in and out of consciousness. And on the last time when he came to, he called for his son. He called for Imam Baqir alayhi salam. Imam Muhammad Baqir, he describes that, listen, that these moments, the last moments of the life of Imam Zayn al-Abidin, Imam Baqir, he said that, Da'ani abi, he says, my father, he called me. And then what did he do? He says, وَضَمَّنِي إِلَى صَدْرِهِ الشَّرِيفِ, that he pulled me close and he held me close to his chest. Subhanallah, we could say to Imam Baqir, he was lucky that as his father was passing away in this world, that his father was able to bring him close and to hug him. But Imam Zayn al-Abidin, when his father was on the plains of Karbala, when Imam Hussein was on the plains of Karbala, he could not pull Imam Zayn al-Abidin close to his chest, because on one hand Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he was sick, but on the other hand, Imam Hussein had spears in his chest, so he could not pull his son close to his chest to give his final farewells to his son. Imam Baqir says, ضَمَّنِي أَبِي إِلَى صَدْرِي. He says, my father, he brought me close to his chest, and then he أَوْصَانِي بِوَصِيَّةٍ, then he gave me his final will. What did Imam Zayn al-Abidin say to Imam Baqir in these last moments? Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he told Imam Baqir, he says, Ya bunayya, he says, oh my son, إِيَّاكَ وَظُلْمَ مَنْ, and be careful of oppressing. إِيَّاكَ وَظُلْمَ مَنْ لَا يَجِدُ نَاصِرًا إِلَّا اللَّهِ. So be careful of oppressing anyone who may not have any helper except for Allah. But then he gave another wasiyah. What was this wasiyah? He told Imam Baqir, إِذَا مَدْتُ غَسِّلْنِي وَدَفِّنِّي. He says, oh my son, that when I die, when my soul leaves my body, then give me ghusl, and then bury my body. This was another wasiyah that Imam Hussein, he could not give to Imam Zayn al-Abidin. This is a wasiyah that Imam Hussein could not give. Why? Because the body of Imam Hussein was left on the plains of Karbala for 3 days, unburied. He was left there until Imam Zayn al-Abidin could come back. Imam Baqir, he says that when his father, at the time that Imam Zayn al-Abidin, he passed away, to fulfill the wish and the wasiyah of his father, he began to give ghusl to his father. But they said that as Imam Zayn al-Abidin, as he was washing the body of his father, they said that they could hear Imam Baqir alayhi salam crying profusely, يَبْكِي بُكَاءً شَدِيدًا. So he was crying very profusely as he was washing the body. that when he finished, some of the companions, some of the Shia, they asked Imam Baqir, he says, ماذا يبكيك يا ابن رسول الله? That what was making you cry, O son of Rasulullah? He says, أبكي لما أرى من آثار الجامعة التي وضعت على صدري. He says, I was crying because as I was washing the body of my father, I began to see the signs and effects that when he was tied up after Karbala. And I could see where the chains were in his hands and they were bruising his hands. These effects, even after years, they were still on the body of my father. And some of the Muqatil, they said that Imam Baqir also, he said that he began to see bruises on the backs of his father as well. He says he doesn't know where this bruise came from. He knows that, yes, the bruises that were on his neck and on his arms were from the time that he was in chains. But when he saw the bruises on his back, he says he realized that his father, he would go out at night and he would feed the poor. But no one recognizes, Ya Madluma wa Masmuma wa Imama. Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. اللهم بحق هذه المجلس العلوية الحسينية اغفر ذنوبنا واستر عيوبنا وقضي حوائجنا واشفي مرضانا وارحم أمواتنا وعجل فرج مولانا صاحب العصر والزمان وجعلنا من أعوانه وأنصاره والمستشهدين بين يديه وتحت لوائه بحق محمد وآله الطاهرين. Inshallah, for the welfare and the well-being of all of those who are ill within our community, and also the mu'mineen and mu'minat around the world, and everyone around the world who may be suffering from oppression and injustice. Let us recite Amma Yujib, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cure those who are sick and lift the oppression from those who are oppressed. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Amma yujibu al-mutarra idha da'ahu yakshifu as-su'. 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 عما يجيب المضطر إذا دعاه ويكشف السوء. اللهم اكشف السوء